Hello, I'm Christine Leinonen. My son, Christopher Andrew Leinonen, was killed at the Pulse nightclub shooting in 2016, along with 48 others, one of whom was his boyfriend, Juan Guerrero. My son was a licensed mental health therapist, and he had a graduate degree in clinical psychology. And I have an undergrad in psychology. And whenever there was a shooting, a mass shooting, we would talk about it from the perspective of mental health because we thought that that was the right thing avenue to prevent these shootings. And we were wrong. It was the guns. It was always the guns. And we can deal with ancillary reasons in addition to the guns, but without dealing with the gun issue, we're not going to solve the gun violence problem. And I'm here to talk about specifically the mass shooting gun problem that is uniquely American. We have these horrific mass shootings and they're getting worse and worse. And I'm in the unique perspective in that in I was a Michigan State police officer for over 10 years, and my son's father was a Detroit police officer for over 25 years. He was even a sniper with the SWAT team for most of his career. And in 1984, the very year that my son was born, me and my partner got an award from ATF for arresting a party store owner who was illegally selling drugs out of his party store, contributing to the drug infestation of the very neighborhood that I grew up in. But he was using the profits from illegal drug sales to purchase legal assault weapons that he was sending over to his family in the Middle East to fight the war in the Middle East. Our legal assault weapons were being purchased legally here in the United States. And America had been an extremely violent society at that point. And by 1994, frankly, America had had enough. And we started the assault weapons ban. And that was in effect from 1994 to 2004. And all George W. Bush had to do was sign it to renew it for another 10 years. And he didn't do that. And now here we are trying to, almost 2 decades later, trying to reestablish bills to try to fight what we already invented back then. We already invented the wheel. We don't have to reinvent it. We had an effective assault weapons ban for 10 years. And in my opinion, mass shootings in particular is the easiest of all the gun violence in America to be solved. And we solve it, first of all, by renewing that ban on assault weapons. And second to that is to ban the high capacity magazines. Because what you're doing in effect by having high capacity magazines and extended magazines is you're making even a handgun into a mass shooting weapon. I carried a Glock handgun on duty and it held 15 rounds and one in the chamber, 16 total. But these handguns now with the extended magazines could shoot 30 or more rounds in a very short period of time. So without having the extended magazine, high capacity magazine, and the assault weapon ban together, we're not going to eliminate or solve the mass shooting problem that is horribly endemic to America. And then the third thing that we need to do to easily solve the mass shooting problem is to undo the PLCAA. George W. Bush, first he wouldn't renew the assault weapons ban, and to set the negative motion of getting worse and more frequent mass shootings was that he signed into law the PLCAA, which in effect tells gun makers and gun manufacturers that they can negligently market to anyone, to the American population, without any liability, without any civil liability of ordinary negligent lawsuits. And it's unfortunate that those two things in conjunction with telling gun manufacturers, look, you can sell assault weapons and you're not going to be sued when people are horrifically murdered with the assault weapon. So, of course, it became worse and worse since then. So that has to be undone. Those three things together would easily solve the mass shooting problem. And I wanted to address a couple of other issues. One is where we have this mistaken belief that more guns will make us safer. We're even saying that teachers should be armed, or that, more good guys with guns stop bad guy with guns. But I could tell you that as a police officer, we were trained that we never relax too soon. So if we found one gun in a car or on a person, do not relax, assume that there's a second gun. So to, first of all, expect a police officer to go into a school where there's a mass shooting, an active shooter happening, and to expect that a teacher with limited training with guns and also has to teach and to keep control of her class, his or her classroom, to think that a police officer is going to know that they're a good guy, that teacher has stamped good guy on their forehead. The police officer will naturally think, even if they saw one active shooter who was the bad guy, they're going to assume that teacher is also a bad guy. So you're putting teachers at additional risk against the good guy with the gun. And to think that the cop or more cops in schools and more good guys are going to solve the gun problem is ludicrous. At the Pulse shooting, there was already an Orlando police officer in the parking lot at the time the shooting happened. Within 1 minute, there were 3 additional police officers who joined. 2 of those 3 were actually on the SWAT team. So you had 4 police officers, and they did not go in. They were afraid to go in against an AR-15. Well, it was a Sig Sauer assault rifle. And the chief of police for Orlando PD even made excuses for his police officers and said, well, they didn't go in because they were outgunned. If 4 police officers, 2 who are trained on the SWAT team, feel that they're outgunned with one guy with an assault weapon, we need to get rid of that assault weapon from the common population. And you could say, well, we'll have laws. We'll have, report to the police kind of laws. Well, my son's shooter actively said that he was going to commit a jihad. He was investigated by the FBI for 2 years, and he was deemed to be not a threat, even though the shooter himself was telling everyone that he was going to commit a jihad. And yet he was put on a terrorist watch list, but he was able to legally buy an assault rifle where he was able to shoot over 100 people in basically 2.5 minutes, half of those dying. So to think you're going to have a law that you see something, say something, or good guy with a gun. In Las Vegas, there were good guys with a gun. There was a Las Vegas police officer who was fired because he hid for 45 minutes while concert goers were being mowed down. In Parkland, 2 police officers were too cowardly to go in to rescue the students. And then again, we see it in Uvalde. So to think that you're going to have good guys with guns and they're going to protect you, even cops are afraid to go up against an assault rifle. So it's clearly the guns. Yes, deal with mental health issues if you want. Deal with arming uh, security at schools and having drills and more doors or less doors or locking doors. And in my opinion, those are all secondary until you can deal with the primary issues. I like to equate it to in my home, if my roof were like mass shootings and my roof were caved in, I'm not going to bother with whether I have sealants in the window or whether my doors lock. I have to deal with the roof that's caved in. So let's deal with the roof of America that's caved in, which is the mass shootings. Then we deal with all the ancillary gun-related violence issues. And then we deal, second and third and fourth and fifth, we deal with additional security and red flag laws and additional uh, mental health. I mean, it's mental health, and that's another issue. Being an angry young man is not it's not a diagnosable mental illness. It's an angry young man issue. And we can't give enough, there isn't any mental health for being angry. Angry is just angry. That's something that all of us flow in and out of anger. And the young men in America, some of them are more angry than others, and they may be more angry at certain times in their lives than other times. So until we eliminate the easy access to high-powered weapons and high-capacity magazines, why are we calling it a mental health issue? Please don't make the same mistake that me and my son made for years from Columbine all the way through Aurora and Sandy Hook. We kept calling it mental illness or mental health issues, and we were wrong. We should have been identifying it as the gun issue. Now, let me just close by telling you what it's like to live with the death of your child. It's a living hell. It's 6 years of a grief that is indescribable. It never goes away. It's the light of my life is gone. My son had a bucket list. He had things he wanted to do, places he wanted to go. And that was all denied him for no other reason but because he had the unfortunate stigma, the unfortunate experience of being born an American. I'm 85% Finnish, and Finland is the happiest place, routinely the happiest place on the planet. And I regret that I gave birth to an American child. My family, my father fought in combat in World War II for the United States. My brothers were in the US Army. My one sister, my one brother are Vietnam era disabled veterans. My nephew did 2 tours in Iraq. I have family all around me. My siblings married Vietnam combat veterans. We fought for this country. We fought. I thought that all the fighting was to give me a better life and to give my son a better life and to give potential grandkids a better life. But what kind of better life is this? This is not a life. Just hope and pray. Like I say, if you're going to give me thoughts and prayers, you should be thinking about how you're going to vote for gun sense candidates. That's what your thoughts should be. And your prayers should be just pray that we get some gun sense before the person you love the most is murdered with a gun. Thank you for your time and lots of love to all of you. Thank you.